The sun was setting over the brick rooftops of North Minneapolis, painting the sky with orange and purple hues, but the beauty of twilight barely reached the narrow streets and dark alleys of the neighborhood. There, where the cracked asphalt told stories of hard lives and deferred dreams, Caleb's life was a constant dance between hope and despair. Caleb, a 17-year-old black teenager with skin as dark as night and eyes as deep as the ocean, had an athletic build shaped by years of street basketball. He was a man of few words, but his presence was magnetic, and his loyalty to the few he trusted was unwavering. However, the pressures of his environment, the constant temptation of the streets, and the absence of a father had planted in him a seed of melancholy, a silent sadness he tried to hide under a facade of indifference. He was a dreamer who saw basketball not just as a game, but as a bridge to a different future, a path to take his family out of that maze. His mother, Lena, was the anchor of his life, a black woman in her 40s, with a tired smile but a stubborn gleam in her eyes. Lena was the embodiment of quiet strength, tirelessly working 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. She had taught Caleb the value of dignity and perseverance, and her love for him was a shield against the world's adversities. His younger sister, Imani, 12 years old, was a ray of sunshine, with contagious energy and a laugh that filled their small apartment. Imani idolized Caleb, and her innocence was a constant reminder of what he was fighting for. The streets of North Minneapolis were a labyrinth of temptations. Drug trafficking was a constant presence, a shadow looming over the lives of the youth. Many of his childhood friends had succumbed to the lure of easy money, to the false sense of power drugs offered. Caleb, with his intelligence and basketball talent, was a prized target. He was often approached by dealers who saw him as a potential recruit, a charismatic and influential young man who could be useful in their illicit business. Among the dealers, Dante stood out. Dante, a black man in his 20s, with a strong build and a cold, calculating gaze, was the leader of one of the most active gangs in the area. He exuded an aura of danger and power, and his reputation was feared. Dante was a natural manipulator who used his charisma and intelligence to lure vulnerable youth into the world of crime. He saw in Caleb raw talent, a potential leader, and was determined to have him on his team. His morality was twisted by his thirst for power and money, and he didn't hesitate to use violence to achieve his goals. He was the embodiment of danger, a dark force threatening to consume Caleb. Caleb, however, resisted. Basketball was his refuge, his escape valve. On the street courts, he forgot the problems, the pressure, the temptations. There he was free. He was the king. His dribbling was poetry in motion, his shots pure magic. He spent hours training, perfecting his moves, dreaming of a college scholarship, of the chance to play on a professional team, of the opportunity to take his family out of that maze. But life on the streets was relentless. The police, with their harsh and often violent presence, were a constant threat. For black youth in the neighborhood, the police were not a force of protection, but of oppression. Stops were frequent, searches humiliating, and violence a reality. Caleb and his friends were constantly stopped, questioned, searched, even without apparent reason. The feeling of being constantly watched, of being treated as a potential criminal, was a heavy burden that fueled anger and distrust. One night, while returning from practice, Caleb was stopped by a patrol car. 2 white officers, with hard faces and suspicious eyes. Officer Miller, the older one, with a stocky build and a look of contempt, was known for his covert racism and brutality. He saw the neighborhood's black youth as potential criminals and didn't hesitate to use force to impose his authority. His morality was twisted by his thirst for power and money, and he believed he was doing society a favor by cleaning up the streets. Officer Davis, the younger one, with an expressionless face and empty gaze, was a follower who obeyed Miller's orders without question. He was the embodiment of indifference, a man desensitized to others' pain and suffering. "Where do you think you're going, boy? You look suspicious. What are you hiding?" Caleb, used to this kind of approach, stayed calm. He explained he was coming from practice, that he was a basketball player. But Miller wasn't convinced. He searched him, threw his backpack on the ground, scattering his belongings. Caleb felt the anger bubbling, but he knew any reaction could make things worse. He remembered his mother's words, "Stay calm, son. Don't give them a reason." Finding nothing, Miller let him go with a warning. "Stay out of trouble, boy. We know who you are." Caleb walked away feeling the weight of injustice on his shoulders. He knew the fight would be long, that the system was against him, but he also knew he had a secret weapon, basketball, and he was determined to use it to escape that maze, to build a future where he and his family could live with dignity and freedom. The journey was just beginning, and Caleb was ready to face the challenges ahead.
The gym at North High School was a sanctuary for Caleb. There, among the squeaking sneakers and the echoing bounce of the ball, he found the peace that the streets denied him. The North Stars basketball team was his second family, and Coach Davies his mentor. Davies, a middle-aged black man with a lean build and eyes that conveyed a quiet wisdom, was more than a coach. He was a father figure to many of the neighborhood boys, a beacon of hope amid darkness. He saw in Caleb not just raw talent, but a potential leader, a young man capable of inspiring and transforming. His morality was unshakable, and he believed that sports were a powerful tool to shape character and build a future. He was the embodiment of resilience, a man who had devoted his life to keeping youth off the streets and guiding them toward the right path. The North Stars season was a spectacle. Caleb, with his agility and game vision, was the team's engine. His passes were precise, his shots accurate, and his defense relentless. He led the team with a calmness and intelligence that impressed everyone. College scouts began attending the games, and Caleb's name was whispered with reverence in college basketball circles. A scholarship seemed inevitable, a golden ticket for him and his family. But the shadow of the streets lingered. Dante, with his web of informants, was always nearby, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. He viewed Caleb's success with a mix of admiration and envy. He knew Caleb was a valuable asset and was determined to have him in his crew at any cost. He sent his henchmen to approach Caleb, offering money and reminding him that street life was easier, more lucrative. Caleb resisted, but the pressure was constant, and the temptation real. One night, after a decisive game, Caleb and his best friend Jamal were walking home. Jamal, a 17-year-old black teen with a wide smile and a pure heart, was in many ways Caleb's opposite. He was outgoing, playful, and saw life with contagious optimism. Jamal was Caleb's partner in everything, his confidant, his soul brother. He was talented in basketball, but his true passion was music, and he dreamed of becoming a music producer. His morality was simple and direct. He believed in the goodness of people and the strength of friendship. He was the embodiment of joy, a young man who radiated light wherever he went. They walked through the dark streets, laughing, dreaming about the future. Jamal talked about the song he was writing, about college plans, about the life ahead. Caleb listened, smiling, feeling a rare sense of peace. But then a black car pulled up beside them. The window rolled down, revealing Dante's face. His eyes gleamed with cold malice. "Caleb, my boy, you're standing out, but the street doesn't forget who we are or what we owe." Caleb felt a chill down his spine. He knew what Dante wanted. He refused to respond and tried to pull Jamal away, but Dante was faster. He pulled a gun and pointed it at Jamal. "You're gonna work for me, Caleb, or your little buddy pays the price." Caleb froze. He looked at Jamal, who was pale, eyes wide with fear. He knew he had no choice. He was about to give in, to surrender to Dante's blackmail,
when Jamal, in a desperate act of bravery, tried to disarm Dante. A shot. A single shot echoed into the night, shattering the silence and their innocence. Jamal fell to the ground, blood staining his white shirt. His eyes, once full of life, now stared blankly at the starry sky. Caleb screamed, a scream of pain, rage, and despair. He knelt beside Jamal, trying to stop the bleeding, calling his name, begging him to wake up. But it was too late. Jamal was gone. Life, once full of promise, had been stolen in an instant by a senseless act of violence. Dante, with a cold smile, dropped the gun and fled, leaving Caleb alone with his pain and guilt. The arrival of the police was a blur. Sirens, flashing lights, questions. Caleb, in shock, could barely speak. He saw Officer Miller again, the same one who had stopped him weeks before, looking at him with contempt. Another one. "I knew you were trouble, boy." Miller's words cut through Caleb's wounded soul like knives. He felt powerless, betrayed, alone. Jamal's death was a turning point in Caleb's life. The pain was unbearable, the guilt overwhelming. He felt responsible for his best friend's death, for not protecting him. The flame of basketball, once burning so bright, seemed extinguished. He withdrew, refusing to attend practices, to speak to his teammates, to leave the house. Depression, like a thick fog, engulfed him, and darkness threatened to consume him entirely. But in the darkness, a voice rose, his mother's Lena's voice, reminding him that Jamal hadn't died in vain. Coach Davies' voice, reminding him that basketball was his chance to honor Jamal's memory, to fight for a better future. Imani's voice, his sister, reminding him that he was the family's only hope. Caleb knew he couldn't give up. He had to fight, not just for himself, but for Jamal, for his family, for all the youth trapped in that street maze. The flame of basketball, though dim, still burned in his heart, and Caleb was determined to reignite it, to turn it into a fire that would light the path out of the darkness.
Jamal's death was a catalyst, a pain so deep it threatened to consume Caleb entirely, yet paradoxically ignited a new flame of determination in his chest. Sorrow and anger blended into a bitter cocktail he needed to transform into fuel. He knew the only way to honor his friend's memory was to fight, not just for himself, but for all the young people, like Jamal, victimized by a system that marginalized them and a street world that seduced them. Caleb's return to the court was slow and painful. Every dribble, every shot, every sprint was a reminder of Jamal's absence. His teammates, who felt the loss as deeply as he did, supported him in silence, understanding the depth of his grief. Coach Davies, with his quiet wisdom, didn't pressure him. He simply watched, waiting for the right moment to intervene. He knew mourning was a process, and Caleb needed time to heal. But the outside world didn't wait. The police, with their oppressive presence, continued patrolling the neighborhood, and stops of black youth became more frequent. Officer Miller, in particular, seemed to take sadistic pleasure in tormenting Caleb. He stopped him on the street, searched him without reason, and provoked him with racist remarks. "Still haven't learned your lesson, boy? The street doesn't forgive." His words were like needles piercing his already fragile armor. The injustice was a heavy burden, and the sense of powerlessness overwhelming. Meanwhile, Dante and his network continued trying to lure Caleb into the world of crime. He sent henchmen offering money, drugs, and promises of an easier life, free from the struggles of poverty and discrimination. The temptation was real, especially in moments of despair. Caleb saw friends who had succumbed to the drug trade flaunting flashy cars and expensive clothes, and the voice of doubt whispered in his mind, "Is it worth the fight?" But Caleb had his anchor, his mother Lena and his sister Imani. Lena, with her unwavering strength, was a constant reminder of his responsibilities. She reminded him of the promises he had made, to himself and to Jamal, that he would use his talent to build a better future. Imani, with her innocence and smile, was the reason he couldn't quit. He wanted her to have a different life, a life free from fear and violence. Coach Davies, recognizing Caleb's inner battle, intensified his efforts to keep him on the right path. He spent hours talking with Caleb, sharing his own experiences, reminding him of the power of sport to transform lives. He connected him with former players who had overcome similar hardships and used basketball to escape poverty and violence. He encouraged Caleb to channel his anger and pain into the game, to use it to build his future. Caleb began attending a community center where neighborhood youth found support and guidance. There, he met with Mrs. Evelyn, an elderly black woman with white hair and a gentle yet firm gaze. Mrs. Evelyn was a community activist who dedicated her life to fighting for social justice and empowering black youth. She became a source of wisdom and inspiration, and her words were a balm for Caleb's soul. She taught him about the history of his people, the civil rights struggle, and the importance of resisting oppression. She helped him understand that his fight wasn't just personal, but part of a larger battle for justice and equality. With the support of his family, his coach, and the community, Caleb began to find his voice. He no longer remained silent in the face of injustice. He questioned police stops, denounced violence, and refused to give in to Dante's temptations. He used his platform as a basketball player to speak out about the neighborhood's problems and to inspire other youth to choose a different path. He became a symbol of resistance, a voice for the voiceless. The fight was daily, and the challenges were immense. But Caleb knew he wasn't alone. He had a community that supported him, a family that loved him, and a sport that saved him. The flame of basketball, which once seemed extinguished, now burned with renewed intensity, lighting the way out of the maze of the streets. He was ready to face the system, to resist temptation, and to fight for a future where hope could bloom, even in the darkest shadows.
The basketball season unfolded like an epic, and Caleb was its undeniable protagonist. Every game was a battle, and every victory a testament to his resilience and his team's strength. The North Stars, driven by Caleb's energy and Jamal's memory, were making history, defying all odds and getting closer to the state championship. Caleb, with his leadership on the court and his growing voice off of it, had become a beacon of hope for the community, a light amid the darkness. But Caleb's success didn't go unnoticed. Dante, watching from a distance, saw the growing threat to his empire. The boy he once tried to recruit and break was now an unstoppable force, inspiring others to question Dante's authority. His fury boiled. To him, basketball was a distraction, a fantasy, blinding young people from the reality of the streets, where power and money were the only gods. Meanwhile, pressure from the racist police force intensified. Officer Miller, frustrated by Caleb's influence and the declining control over the neighborhood, escalated his tactics. Stops became more aggressive, searches more degrading, and threats more explicit. He saw Caleb as a troublemaker, someone challenging the established order, and was determined to put him in his place. His prejudice-ridden mind couldn't accept that a young black man could achieve success through merit without criminal ties. One night, after an exhausting practice, Caleb was stopped by Miller and Davis. The street was deserted, and the darkness seemed to amplify the tension. Miller, with a cynical smile, began taunting him. "So, the big basketball star. Think you're untouchable, huh? Think you can change the world with a ball?" Caleb remained calm, his eyes locked with Miller's, refusing to give in. He knew Miller wanted a reaction, an excuse to use force and justify brutality. Frustrated by Caleb's composure, Miller searched him violently, throwing his things to the ground. He shoved him against the wall, whispering threats. "I know what you and your little buddies are up to. Don't think we're blind. Sooner or later, you'll slip, and I'll be there." Caleb felt rage boiling inside, the urge to fight back. But he remembered Coach Davies' words. "Use your head, Caleb. Don't give them what they want." Suddenly, a voice rose in the dark. It was Mrs. Evelyn, returning from a community meeting. With her commanding presence and firm voice, she confronted the officers. "What's going on here?
Why are you harassing this young man?" Caught off guard, Miller tried to justify himself, but Mrs. Evelyn stood her ground. She reminded them of Caleb's rights, the need to respect the community, and the importance of building bridges, not walls. Her presence, along with other neighbors arriving after hearing the commotion, forced the officers to back off. The incident left a deep mark on Caleb. He realized the fight against the system was a daily struggle that required courage, intelligence, and community support. He couldn't remain silent. He had to use his voice to denounce injustice and inspire others to do the same. He became more involved in activism, attending meetings, organizing peaceful protests, and using his platform as a player to speak out. But Dante's threat still loomed. Seeing intimidation wasn't working, the dealer changed tactics. He approached Lena, Caleb's mother, offering money to help pay the bills and the promise of an easier life. He knew Lena was Caleb's weak spot and aimed to manipulate her. Tired of struggling and worried for her children's future, Lena felt tempted. Dante's offer was seductive, a way out of financial hardship. When Caleb learned of Dante's approach, he was filled with a mix of anger and despair. He confronted his mother, reminding her of the dangers of that world, of Jamal's fate. Through tears, Lena confessed her exhaustion, her fear of not providing the life her children deserved. It was a moment of deep vulnerability, where Caleb saw the immense weight his mother carried and the depth of her love. In that moment, Caleb made a choice. He couldn't let his mother give in to temptation or let his family be pulled into the street's maze. He promised Lena he would handle everything, that he'd get them out of this, that he'd make her proud. His decision was an act of love, sacrifice, and unshakable determination. Caleb was ready to confront Dante, fight the system, and prove that hope could flourish even in the deepest shadows.
Caleb's decision to protect his family and fight for a better future echoed in every dribble, every shot, every step on the court. The North Stars season culminated in a thrilling climax, the state championship final. The gym was packed, the energy palpable, and anticipation hung in the air. Caleb, with his commanding presence and determined gaze, led his team, a unit forged through adversity and pain, now a brotherhood. The game was an epic battle. The opposing team, the Southside Kings, were strong, fast, and relentless. But the North Stars, driven by Jamal's memory and Caleb's leadership, played with a fire and passion that surpassed skill alone. Caleb was on fire. His passes were razor-sharp, his shots flawless, and his defense unbreakable. He was the conductor of a symphony of warriors, and every play was a masterpiece. He could feel Jamal's presence beside him with every dribble, every leap, every point. In the final quarter, with the score tight and the clock ticking down, Caleb made the winning play. He stole the ball, raced down the court, and with a perfect shot, sealed the championship for the North Stars. The crowd erupted into a deafening roar. His teammates hoisted him on their shoulders, celebrating the victory. Caleb looked to the stands, saw his mother and sister crying tears of joy, and felt an overwhelming wave of emotion. He had kept his promise. He had won. The state championship was only the beginning. Caleb's story, the boy who overcame street violence, systemic racism, and the loss of his best friend to become a champion, resonated across the country. Scouts from prestigious universities who once overlooked him were now eager to sign him. With guidance from Coach Davies and Mrs. Evelyn, Caleb chose Howard University, one of the most renowned historically black colleges in the U.S., where he could continue his academic and athletic journey and use his platform to advocate for social justice. College brought years of growth and learning. Caleb excelled both on the court and in the classroom, becoming a role model to his peers. He used his voice to highlight the challenges faced by Black youth in underserved communities and the power of education, sports, and resistance against racism and violence. He became an activist, joining peaceful protests, organizing awareness campaigns, and inspiring others to stand up for justice. After graduation, Caleb was drafted into the NBA,
fulfilling his dream of playing professional basketball. He quickly made a name for himself, but his legacy went far beyond the court. He used his wealth and influence to create a foundation in Jamal's name, offering basketball, education, and mentorship programs to youth in North Minneapolis. He built a community center where kids could find safety and support away from violence and street temptations. He became a mentor, a beacon of hope, and proof that success was possible despite the odds. Lena, his mother, and Imani, his sister, were his biggest fans. They followed him to every game, every event, every triumph. Lena, her tired smile now radiant with pride, saw in Caleb the fruit of all her sacrifices. Imani, now a young woman, followed in her brother's footsteps, becoming an activist and a leader in her own right. The family, once engulfed in hardship, now lived in comfort and safety, but never forgot their roots or the struggle that brought them there. Caleb's legacy wasn't about titles or records. It was the story of a young man who refused to be defined by his environment, who turned pain into strength and adversity into opportunity. It was proof that willpower, faith, and community support could overcome any obstacle. His journey from the street courts of North Minneapolis to packed NBA arenas was a reminder that even the most distant dreams could be reached with courage, determination, and a heart that refuses to give up. Caleb was more than a basketball player. He was a symbol of hope, a warrior who inspired millions, and a legacy that would echo for generations.